What's up, you phonies, and how's it going? Welcome to another video. Today we're gonna go through the entire process how you can implement 3D objects in Blender in real life footage. So we're gonna track our footage, we're gonna implement models, light them, make them pretty, and I'm gonna show you how to render them properly. Then also I'm gonna show you how to composite them in After Effects, and then also color grade in Premiere for the final render. It's gonna be a lot, and I'm gonna rush through the entire process pretty quickly, so it's more of an advanced or intermediate tutorial. So if you have any issues or something goes too fast, just go back, watch it again, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. But now, let's get started. Here we have footage from my gym. It's a tricking gym, it's called Joining All Movement. That's where I go to learn some flips and tricks. And I figured, why don't I film a little bit and put a 3D model in there? Something would make sense, like a pirate ship. Let's go, it's gonna be fun. Let's start with Blender. I'm gonna delete my camera, we don't need it. I open my motion tracking tab, load in my footage, that's the footage. And now I'm just gonna set scene frames. Under tracking settings, I'm gonna select blurry footage, usually that works best, and then detect features. I'm going to delete all the trackers on my mirror because I don't want to track that. I don't want to track the real people either because they're moving. And then I just add a few more trackers and then I track this entire footage. Then I'm just going to delete all the trackers which I believe they're a little errory. We don't want them, so I'm just going to delete them manually. Just select them, hit X, delete them until we get a solved error of 1 pixel or 2 pixels, but nothing over 3 pixels. Then I'm gonna go to my normal view, then turn on motion tracking on my view layer so I see all the tracking markers in my scene. That's gonna help me to align the actual camera because the tracker didn't do such a good job. So I'll go in top view and move my camera until the tracking markers align with the walls. Once this is done, I need to create the mirror. So I'm just gonna create a plane, scale it up, bring it into position where the real mirror is because I need to reflect my actual model also in the mirror, otherwise it would look fake, right? So I scale it up, subdivide it, and then I just remodel basically the mirror, which is not that complicated. The most complicated part is on one section the mirror actually sticks out, and that I have to model myself, and I just bring a few edges out and model along the axes, just very rough. But I realized that this mirror move actually doesn't work, but I'm going to tell you more about that later. I already put in my pirate ship in there. I had to scale a little smaller because the real size of the pirate ship would be way too big. I put an hdri light to light this thing, and now it's time to make the mirror because it rhymes with blue. For the material, I just make it very metallic and bring down the roughness so it actually reflects. You can already see the reflection, but the problem with that is it also reflects my hdri, which I don't want, which made me actually go another way. In the end, I didn't end up using the mirror I just built. I actually used a modifier on my pirate ship. The modifier is called Miro, who would have thought. And then I just select my mirror I made before as the mirror object, and then it just flips on the other side, and it just works just like a mirror, which is awesome. Then I just had to make a little shadow catcher so it doesn't mirror where the mirror actually ends. So just like before, I make a little plane, scale it on the x-axis, and then we don't see it where the mirror ends. Perfect. As we can see, the tracker works pretty well. Now it's time to adjust the hdri a little. I rotate the hdri a little, I make it a little brighter. You can even play with the warmth to make it a little colder, a little warmer, depending on what your footage looks like. I could have made it a little colder because it seems very cold in there, but it's mostly because of the reflective ground. Then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna make the ship a little bigger, stick it into the ground, but not too much. And the cool thing is, through the mirror modifier, the reflection does the same thing. Once everything looks good, I just adjust the materials a little. I strengthen the normal map just to get a little more extra detail. There's so many things you can do. I always like to add ramps between the nodes, like roughness, for example, to increase the roughness a little. This ship has 3 different materials for the rigging, the sails, and the hull. And I just do the same thing on all of them just to get some extra detail. The way I got this ship from Polyhaven, they have lots of cool models you can just use for free, which is awesome. But the also cool thing is you can adjust the resolution of the material. And if it's an important scene, if it has to look good, I would increase it to at least 2K. You can do that in the material options, which is awesome. I did that and immediately it looks better. Now it's time to render this thing. I'm making a folder for my PNG sequence. I go to my compositor and there I have to make file output and just connect image with image. Then on file output, I go to the node properties on the top right and I make another output for shadow. Then I attach the shadow to the shadow. That way I get 2 different layers I can manipulate individually, which is very helpful in the compositing, which is going to be the next step. By the way, it took around 38 seconds per frame to render it. It was around 180 frames total. Now we are in After Effects. The first thing we do is we load in all our material. We have our video. Then I go to interpret footage. I copy and paste the frame rates to my other videos. If you don't do that, the tracking will not work. So that's a very important step. Now I bring in my shadow, bring in my image. As you can see, I didn't render my 3D elements in 4K like the video was. I rendered in full HD. So there is an effect under Effect, Distort, Detail, Preserving, Upscale. If you use that and bring that to 200%, you can upscale your material, your videos without losing too much information. Then I copy paste the effect on my shadow catcher and that's what I get. So obviously that doesn't look like much. I need to set my shadow catcher to multiply so that the shadow actually works as a shadow. But we're going to refine the shadow a little later. This is what it looks like now. It looks pretty cool. The first problem I see is a guy runs in front of my reflection. And that is a problem. It's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because now we have to cut him out frame by frame so we can set the reflection behind him, which is a headache and it can take a very long time, especially with a weaker computer. But the good thing about that is that way you can layer your effects. You have your real video, which is technically just the background. Then you have the effects, which is right in front of it. And then you have to rotoscope this one person on the right and bring him on top of that. This kind of layering sells an effect really good. So it's actually a good thing that happened. It wasn't planned. It was just one guy I was training with. I didn't tell him to run into my shot. But it happened and I'm actually lucky. So now we have to duplicate our footage, bring it to the top. We select our rotor brush tool, double click our footage, and now comes the hard part. We have to draw him out frame by frame, more or less, and be exact. Don't be lazy with it. Do a very detailed job, because then when you go frame by frame, in that case I go backwards because you can see him best on the last frame. I just go frame by frame backwards and clean him up, especially where the mirror area is, until I'm through this entire shot where he is in it. Everything else I don't need to do that. Then I just cut the layer, delete the part before, and now I have a clean rotoscope. In the rotor brush matte effects, I always like to increase the feather and decrease the ship edge. It always makes it a little look real, but it always depends on your footage. But now look at that. The guy is right in front of the reflection, and that's what it's supposed to. I don't even know what he was doing there. Weird. Anyways, you see that the shadow is doing funky tricks. What I always do with the shadow is I use curves on it and bring the whites up. And then I adjust the darker levels, almost like a sharp S-curve, to bring the shadows to a normal level. I always compare the pirate ship shadows with all the other shadows so they kind of align. Obviously my pirate ship is bigger than the other objects in the shot, but I just try to fine tune until it looks real. Okay, everything what comes from now in After Effects is just a bonus. Something I always like to do to make my CG VFX videos look a little more real. So what I like to do is I bring in noise. This is real film noise. I'll upscale it and put it on overlay. Then I bring the opacity down to like 30%. That just brings the entire image closer together. The next step is what I sometimes like to do is I use Video Copilot's optical flare. If you don't have that, just go on Google, download Lens Dirt. Whatever you like, just download it. It can be just an image and just bring it into After Effects. Or if you're a member of my Patreon, you have access to my personal film grain and Lens Dirt if you want to use mine. And I appreciate the support. If you use optical flare, you go on options, delete all the elements, just go on lens texture, set it to dirty, play around with the settings until you got something you like. So I usually just play around with the fall off and then I'm satisfied. Set the layer to screen, then go down with the brightness until it kind of looks real. If there was a light shining into the camera or there was a very bright light source, then obviously you want to have it a little brighter. In this case, there's no particular light source which is shining into the camera, so technically there wouldn't even be lens dirt, but still, this is like one of my cheap tricks I like to do. Even if it's just a little, it's always helpful to make it look real in the end. And another one I like to do, especially when it's iPhone footage, like this in this case, I like to add a directional blur. Sometimes you see that when people take videos on their iPhones, there's like some kind of blur going on because the lens is like smudgy, and that's what we're going to simulate now. So we're going to use a directional blur, set it to lighten, and then adjust the colors with curves a little until we like it. Bring this on top of your video, and then set the opacity the way you want it, and that should do it. The next one is particularly helpful if your track is not perfect. In that case, it's pretty good, it's not necessary, but that's something I always like to do, is I pre-comp all my video layers without the overlays on top. You can see that here. I pre-comp them and then I animate the position. And I don't do that manually, I do that with the wiggle expression. You just hold Alt, click on position, and then you can type in wiggle 2.20 or 2.50. The first number is about how fast it's moving. The second number after the comma is about how many pixels it's moving. So 1.5 million would be very slow movement, but very big movement. So it would be like moving like crazy. If it was 100,1, it would be super fast movement, but super small, like jittery, which is very cool for like explosions or whatever. I always make it jitter a little. Anyways, in that particular case, I play around until I like what I see. In the end, I decided 2.50 was the best. Then I'm gonna do the same thing with the rotation. Just make sure in the rotation, don't move it too many pixels. 1.1 is usually the best solution. Unless you want to have it faster, I usually don't do more than 1 pixel. Otherwise, it really shakes a lot and you don't want that. And after you're done with that, you need to get rid of those black edges, and either you just duplicate your layer and just scale up the bottom layer, then those edges are not as visible. But the safer choice is just make your composition bigger, because then scale up, then you're gonna lose those black edges. But then, it's gonna be cropped in a little more, which is not a big deal in my shot, but it can be in yours. So that's something to be mindful about. Then the last thing is add motion blur to your shot, because when the camera is moving, it should be moving as well. And then pre-render. Go on high quality, make sure it's ProRes 422, that's the best render settings you can get, and ready. Now I'm gonna bring my After Effects video into Premiere just for a simple color grading. And really, I just play around with the settings. I increase the contrast, I play with the highlights, play with the shadows, maybe with the whites, definitely with the color temperature. It doesn't really matter what you do because it always brings the footage closer together. Play with the vignette, give it a little sharpness, make it just look better, you know, and that way all your elements in your video are gonna be closer together, which is always helpful as the last step. And then when you render it, this is what it looks like. But hold on, before you turn off the video, that's not it. While you have your Blender scene already set up, you can add more objects or other objects, like maybe a character animation. And that's what we're gonna do now. And stay tuned because what I'm about to do is pretty cool. Have you heard of Mixamo? If you have an Adobe account, you can use Mixamo for simple character animation, and you can even use the character models, which I use, for example, for this film. Pretty cool, right? But we're not gonna get that much into detail, but I'm gonna show you how you can use those Mixamo models, put them in your scene, make them look cool, and let's go. So you just go on the Mixamo website, and then the first thing you should do is pick a character model. I use this monster here because that's exactly the monster I was using in my short film. If you haven't seen the film yet, I'm gonna have it here right now, so you definitely should check it out, but it's also gonna be in my description. So let's use this monster, and I want to use this monster. I want him to do a flip because it's a tricking gym. They do flips there. So I'm just going to type in the animation section flip, and let's go with the front flip. Cool. Now I have a huge monster like Hulk or something doing a front flip. Sick. Now you can click on download. Make sure you download 24 frames FBX file and just hit download. Now in Blender, you just go on File, Import, FBX, and then find your download, front flip. Now it's going to be in your scene. The first thing I do is I bring it up to scale because it's pretty small right now, so I make him as big as I want him to be and just hit S and make him bigger. Gonna be sick. I'm so excited. So I have this front flip animation. The next thing is I have to bring in the right rotation with R and Z. Then I bring it to the right place, and I want him basically to flick through the shot. Right now he's jumping a little too high, but I don't want to make him small. I just bring him further away from the camera, so he jumps through the frame basically, which is awesome. And that's basically it. But now I want him to be a little more real. So what I'm going to do is I just adjust the hue and saturation of his skin a little until he's not that monstery anymore. I want to get a little closer to skin color. So I hook up between the skin node and the principal BSDF. I hook up a hue and saturation, play with the values until I like what I see. Now I want his skin to have a little more detail, and I'm really not a material maker. I don't know how to make these things, but the good thing is Polyhaven has a bunch of materials, and I can just make a cube and look at the materials and see what I like. And in that case, maybe like a rock texture would work because he's monstrous, so I'll give him like a little rock. Then I'm gonna go to the normal map, copy paste it into my monster material. Now I mix those two normal maps or bump maps which are there already. Now in the mix node, I can just go through the factor and see how much of which texture I want to use until I'm happy with the results. Awesome. Then in the composite, I just have to select a new folder where I want to render it to, and that's it for this one. So that's going to be another few hours to render. So while it's rendering, I'm going to prepare the email from my client for the pirate ship. So I'm just going to send him an email, stupidclient@gmail.com, pirate ship in the gym. Sup Euphonia, how's it going? I'm sending you the finished pirate ship. If you have any notes, take them and shove them up your ass. Yours sincerely, Phil Flop. Perfect. So I can send him the pirate ship now, so he's gonna be happy. So let's go to After Effects and composite our monster together. So we're back in After Effects. We still have our pirate ship here, which we can ignore for now. I'm gonna double click here on the side, and now I can go look for my Blender render. This is my image sequence. And then I'll go down to my shadow layer. You can just select any of them, it doesn't matter because image PNG sequence is selected. Import, and remember what we did before. And go on my video, go on integrate footage, main, copy the 24 frames. Yeah, it looks like the monster. Go on this one, integrate footage, main, 24 frames. I can bring it already in. This is my monster, integrate footage, main. This is super important. Don't miss this step because if you miss that, the framing is gonna be for shit. Then I'm gonna bring that one on top of this. So I can delete my pirate ship. I don't need this anymore. I just mute it. Done. And I do exactly what I did before. The effect I used before, I just copy my effects so I don't have to do it again. It's the upscale and the curves. Set the shadow to multiply, and that's the video. It's a monster doing a front flip. Pretty cool, right? Now I'm gonna show you one last move you can do. Oh, it's even cool. It looks like he jumps over this, which is pretty sick. I didn't even plan to do that. But now, two things. If you ever seen anyone doing a backflip or a front flip or any kind of flip in a video, it happens very often that the earth shakes when they jump off and when they land. And especially with a big monster like that, that could sell the effect pretty well. So I'm gonna go to my other layer where I did my camera and motion blur and everything. And on the impact when he jumps off, which is here, I go P for position. See, this is my wiggle I had before. And I'm gonna also animate the position. Hit on this little stopwatch with control right arrow. Go 3 frames to the right. Make another keyframe. Select them both. And here on the right side, go 24. It's 24 frames per second. And let's say a magnitude of 20. When I hit apply, I have a little camera shake. And when he lands, I'm gonna do the same thing. The first leg lands here, but this time I can just copy and paste my two. I can just copy paste my keyframes, and now it happens automatically. Well, awesome. Then we render this whole thing, and that's what it looks like. So that's it for this video. I hope that was helpful and not too stressful. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. Go check out my short film I just published. It's a horror film. It's a monster horror film where I used exactly that monster. How I made this monster so furry. I'm definitely going to make a tutorial on that because that was quite a difficult process, but actually very simple to do. So stay tuned for that video and see you in the next one.